Hello, Mike. Hello to our listeners. Welcome to Travel Again Presents, the weekly travel roundup. Headwinds and tailwinds impacting the business of travel. A weekly look at what matters most to our amazing industry. Mike, nice to see you.
Good to see you, Ed. Welcome back.
Same to you. So, why don't we start out by having you tell us a little bit about why we're back and what format we'll be using in our return.
So, we wanted to build off the success and kind of the great feedback we had from the Travel Again reunion that just happened and look at a way that we could start to connect again weekly like we did previously during the pandemic. But it seemed like a good opportunity. We're still in a rebuilding mode with the industry. There's still a need for really understanding the key issues that are affecting the industry and what, is again a headwind or a tailwind that is has impact on the growth of the industry and full recovery. The format we agreed on is to do kind of in honor of our on-time arrival window for airlines of 15 minutes. We wanted to stick to about 15, 20 minutes in terms of the content. Now, sometimes we may do an extra bonus 10 or 15 if we have a special guest. But otherwise, we're going to take about 5 or 6 topics, news articles, things that we're identifying that week that are really things to pay attention to, give a little insight, and hopefully help everyone that's listening and watching, just give them a little less news to read and a little more context around the 97 different news feeds that they're probably looking at, right?
Okay. Thanks, Mike. With that, for episode 1, let's dig in. The first 2 articles I chose are around how long will the boom last, and also some of the results of our Travel Again reunion survey. And so let's talk about the boom, because clearly there is one, and as was reported in Travel Weekly. Why don't you tell us about that? And Mike, how long do you think it'll last?
Well, I think the consensus from the article seemed to be everyone kind of had their own lens or their own perspective about it, whether they're seeing kind of a, speed up, slow down. I think the general trend is recovery. It continues. And as we in our research have done and kind of outlined, even, when we started Travel Again, that there are 3 phases to this recovery. There's the first phase, which is, the right in the middle of the pandemic and working through all that. The second phase, which we will finish up the end of this year, is kind of that a first real recovery stage, creating a real solid foundation for the industry to build on, get back to a lot of normal practices. And then the third phase is basically the rest of the tail of the recovery, which looks a lot more like the recovery we had from the banking crisis, right? Because now we're building back to a point at which we've got stable foundation and can go from there. And it seems like everyone, again, has a different take on it. But the numbers we found in our survey, our most recent one, is that traveler confidence is back to where it was. It's very high. And we're seeing that come out in terms of domestic travel. But the real kind of takeaway from our study, I think, is the numbers around international travel. Because what's that showing is that leisure travelers are saying 73% of them are saying that if that they would travel internationally if they had the means or the ability to do so, and 62% of business travelers would go internationally if their company needed them to. You look at those numbers; those are double what they were a year ago. So I think, again, our ability to get, just like working out of the banking crisis, the willingness and desire to travel internationally, the feeling that you can do that safely and securely and are ready to take on any additional risk that comes with international travel, is a real good bellwether for continued recovery.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Next story I've chosen for us happened around the July 4th holiday, where there was quite a bit of weather in the Northeast, and many airlines struggled, but none more than United Airlines. And the CEO of United Airlines decided that since he couldn't get out on his airline, he took a private jet and got himself into some hot water. And there are a couple articles about this, so let's talk about it. What do you think there, Mike?
Well, let's just put the private jet issue aside because to me, a CEO of a huge corporation needing to take a private aircraft to get from point A to point B to get accomplish their business objectives is not anything terrible. It's not. I think the challenge here is that same CEO happens to run one of the world's largest airlines. So, and maybe at the timing when people were stranded, it certainly the optics weren't great. But let's put that one aside because that's really irrelevant to what the issues are, right? The real issues are that first off, we need as an industry, we've been saying this and saying this, a real investment back into air traffic control modernization, more funding for our, FAA, for TSA, to make sure that we support this very industry that we all rely on. It's probably the most critical industry or one of the most critical we have in our entire country, and globally, right? In terms of our position. So we have to support the airline industry. We have to make those investments. As an aside, there's a bill going through right now that's getting a lot of support, hopefully around FAA reauthorization, which will include some additional funding that's needed. The other part of this, though, is that we don't need United's CEO and the FAA, having public fights, right? I'm glad seemingly they've kind of kissed and made up and are working together to row in the same direction, whereas exactly where we need to be. We need public-private partnership, full cooperation, everybody getting on the same page with this. If we want to get the funding in place, we need Congress behind this. We need the White House behind this. We've got to get everybody rowing in the same direction. I think we will get there, but it takes a lot of work. And unfortunately, there's a lot of, again, distractions from the outcomes. But you look at what happened with the weather, with a major hub, there's a lot of work to do here because it is a complex issue in terms of the number of flights that can be allowed, how this all can be done, the staffing, the recovery, a lot to consider. But it's probably it is the most important thing we can be doing as an industry right now.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Our next article is once we're talking about airlines, let's talk about aircraft configuration. And there's an interesting, article in the Wall Street Journal about can airline seating get any worse?
It's a really quite an image there. It seems like, I don't know about you, but every time any airline introduces a new seat, a new configuration, it's like, I feel like I either need to lose weight or the seats have just, is my imagination, they've just gotten a little bit narrower. This is another area to me that calls out for regulation, and it's because if we're doing all this funding, we're making all this investment, we at the same time, we also have to have rules of engagement. Things like the 3-hour tarmac rule, no voice calls on planes. Here's another example. You put standards in place that everybody has to follow. You take it out of being a competitive issue. This airline A has a seat that's like, an inch smaller or wider than that one. It's like, no. Let's set minimum standards that fit with like basically the size of America in terms of our height, our weight, something that's reasonable in terms of a coach seat, and then go from there. It can be competitive after that, but I think there has to be some standards here because otherwise we either we're all getting a lot bigger, the seats are all getting a lot smaller, or maybe a combination of both, but it doesn't work. And at some point it becomes a health issue, safety issue. We've got to have some standards here.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Our next article is I'm going to bring up 2 articles. And what I want to understand from your perspective is, well, one, is this a headwind or a tailwind? Because I'm not sure. And 2, is this a trend that we're seeing? And so what we've got are 2 CFO departures, chief financial officer departures, one from Uber and the other from Navan. I'll pull up those articles, but what's your perspective here? Is this a trend and headwind or tailwind?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a trend. Look, big companies, you have, executives come and go. Certainly the Navan one's getting a lot of attention because they're pre-IPO and have been very public about that, coming. So for a CFO to depart, during that process, certainly, it raises an eyebrow, right? I think though what we are seeing overall is this has become, travel is a big money game here. Travel distribution. These companies, the banks have all, we've got American Express, we've got Chase, we've got Cap One, et cetera, all making big investments in travel. I mean, Amex is still the gold standard that has been there, since the beginning. But you look at all of these, brands. You've got the new players in the space. Navan has had huge funding. So there's, Uber. We all know the Uber story, right? But the amount of money at stake there, the amount of investment. So you've got a lot of money at stake. You got this is you're going to have these types of things. I think everyone does watch this a lot closer now because of the amount that's at stake and because we have big brands playing in the travel sandbox. So I'll be really interested to see, is there going to be more industry consolidation coming, right? The bigger are going to keep getting bigger, because that volume's the name of the game in travel. It always has been and always will be.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to our friends at the company Dime. That article required a subscription, so thanks to them for that.
Yeah, Jay and David do good work, and so we like to support that for sure.
Okay, the next article was about Expedia cutting ties with Hopper. This was an exclusive by Skift, and good job on them. But it clearly shows some industry turmoil. What do you think? What's your take on why Expedia cut ties and what it means for the rest of the industry?
Well, we could easily do 15 minutes just on this article, man. It has a lot of implications because, that first off, to have a partnership like that, very publicly break is, interesting in its own right. You've got the fact that Expedia is going through clearly a big makeover of their business. I mean, everyone knows they sold the Agencia business travel business to Amex GBT. They are looks like they're kind of resetting their whole business, making, staffing adjustments, et cetera. They ended the Hopper relationship. They're clearly making a lot of moves now and making sure to put themselves in a position to make sure that they continue to have a seat at the table with all the big brands and big players. So don't count them out. I mean, for sure, it's a great brand, and they've launched their what is it though? One Key loyalty program, putting, first time tying together all their brands under one loyalty program. So there's a lot going on there, right? The Hopper piece is really interesting. If you read the article, I mean, Steve Hafner, our friend from the industry, never one to mince words. He's always very entertaining to hear on stage and speaks his mind. He's saying what a lot of people have been saying privately about, Hopper and their business, and he offers up criticisms for sure. You got to put it through a lens, though. He is a competitor, so you have to take that into consideration. I'm sure Hopper has their views on their business and would have a, quite a, I'm sure, retort or reply to this article, and probably will. But it makes interesting stuff for the industry, and I love it. I mean, I think it's great when, again, the big debate, right? But it tells you once again the same thing: big money at stake. Everybody's vying for that, to keep the seat at the table. And there's a lot of, the music's going to stop, and different things are going to, I think those relationships will keep realigning and realigning as everybody gets set. And why? Because back to where we started this whole thing, it's all about trying to get your piece of the pie. As the pie keeps growing and the industry keeps recovering, all the brands, everybody wants their share of their fair share and then some, right? So that's all these things kind of come back to that same, thing, which is the business is back, travel's back, and it's going to keep growing and growing.
Okay. Those are our articles for the week. Thank you for your insight. Last, we thought we'd wrap up with the Zen of the week. This comes from a show.
So this is from the old Daily Show with Jon Stewart. They did their moment of Zen at the end of the show, which was just pick something out, which was, a clip, something that was kind of funnier on its own right. And travel certainly has plenty of travel moments of Zen. A lot of them on the front lines out there between travelers and industry employees and behavior and issues and challenges as everyone's out there, largely trying to, certainly all the workers are trying to do their best they can. Most 99.9% of the travelers are just trying to get from point A to point B and, make it all work. Right. But man, when the outliers, man, when they come, makes for some really funny moments of Zen. So here's our wrapping up, right? Right on 15 minutes.
Yeah, wrap it up. This was a woman who exited the plane. There was a TikTok video of this, and she was concerned that the man next to her was not real and was a robot. And in a curse-filled exit, she left saying, "I don't want to sit next to someone who's not real." And it made national and international news just because of it being another weird moment in travel.
This almost needs no introduction. All right. Well, until next week, Ed.
Until next week. Thank you, everybody. We will see you next week. Thank you, Mike.